Imagine you came up with a musical idea, and this could be a melody or a chord progression, and now you want to write something around it in the empty registers. So how do you go about filling up those registers so that you eventually end up with a full-blown piece? Well, after this video, you will know. Now when we try to extend this to the bottom, the first thing that I would do to reduce the amount of choices and the amount of possible wrong choices, I would try to find a good root tone that works with the melody, and that is the guy marked in blue. And now the big question is, how can we find a good root tone? So I'm just spotting the 5 and the 7 intervals. Let's consider this to be one of those rest points, and let's see what we can spot right here. That is definitely a good rest point, as you can tell. And we have the D. Okay, so whenever you have a 5 interval, that's a question for you. What of those 2 notes is the root? If you cannot answer this question right away, go back to the overtone series, because it will show you the answer. I can actually show you the answer right now, of course, since I don't want to lose your attention. Whenever you play a 5 interval, the top guy right here is the root tone. And the reason for that is just have a look at the second octave of the overtone series, and you will see how this 5 interval shows up. Scale tone 5 is the lower note, and the root tone is the higher note. Okay? And whenever we play a 7 interval, then what's the root right now? Is it the A or the E? Absolutely, it has to be the A right here, because that is our strong perfect 5th, right? And that actually appears before the perfect 4th in the overtone series. So we have given ourselves right now 2 potential root tones. Well, right here we have a B flat. Okay, so that's a potential problem spot that we will keep in mind. But for the most part, A and D will work nicely. And yes, I wrote it down actually. I should have scrolled down a few more pixels. But anyway, we can continue. The next step is I want to check these 2 potential root tones against the upper structure in the strings. To remind you, that's the red vertical structure here. Okay, so we have the F sharp, the B, and the E. That's our 5 plus 5 again. So I want to quickly check if the D and the A make sense against those vertical structures. And actually, yes, they do. And we can also have a quick listen to those, because why not? Okay, no problems here. So once we have defined these things, let's try to keep things as simple as possible in the lower register. And the simplest extensions that we can bring in the lower register are simple triads. So let's start with that, because why not? And when we have a D root tone right here, we already have an F sharp in our pedal structure up here. So this determines the major character of the chord. And then in the next bar, let's make a little switch here, and we can go to the A. When we look at those structures, we could have gone to major or minor. Both things would have worked. I went to a minor, but it depends on your taste. And then I come back to my D major here. The only thing right now that is missing is scale tone 5. So scale tone 5 came from the original string, the melody right here. So we don't have this 5 available right now. We can actually insert this. We don't have to though. So I would rather look at those big strokes in your sketch and try to have a consistent number of parts throughout these sections. And that's exactly what we will be doing later. Then right here, that goes a little bit into the voicing right now. This also brings in the overtone series. Again, most of this stuff is just based on the overtone series, and it's the easiest guideline that you can choose. So I highly recommend you do that. So when we look at the strings, you see that this is kind of the voicing in the strings. And that is absolutely where we can put in the brass section. That's a perfect spot. And we can write the woodwinds above. And that is really how you create transparency. Don't try to put everything into the same octave. It doesn't make any sense, and it won't sound transparent at all. Try to spot those empty spaces, and then you want to jump into those spaces. And that's the whole voicing right here. These two guys, the brass and the strings combined. That is kind of the voicing that we create. This scale tone 5 right here, if I doubled this scale tone 5, I just would have completely agreed with the overtone series. But still, in the trombones, I'm bringing in scale tone 6 against scale tone 5 from the horns. And this creates a nice little color. I'm thinking of this scale tone 6 as a substitute tone. Originally, this was my G major triad. Very simple, very simple. I did not want to write a 6 chord there. I just thought, okay, this sounds too obvious, too simple-minded. So let's bring in a bit more complexity, controlled complexity. Depending on whether or not you are in the second octave or the first octave of the overtone series, you can substitute some of those scale tones or chord tones. And in particular, I would look for 6/4/5 and 2/4/1. But the idea is, yes, start simple, then bring in those substitutions, not the other way around. And here is even another little example of the voicing. And that is the final chord structure of this piece. When you look at the voicing right here and the orchestration, then you will see that this follows almost 100% the overtone series. There's just one guy in here that is not part of the overtone series. One note. And I can show you this E right here. That's the guy. So that is not part of the overtone series. The E, it does not show up in the strings though. This guy here is pretty close. That is scale tone 5 right here. It's a doubling of the violas. Then when we go into the treble clef, you see the middle C and the E. Here's my little connecting note. But right here, that is the whole full picture of the voicing and the orchestration of the last chord structure. So this all just gives you an idea how to, extend into these registers. So just think of those things, those extensions, like more complexity to the top, less complexity to the bottom. And this is a pretty strong starting point. You don't have to stick to that, but I would start there at least. Let's just go through this piece. So here is the full mix again. Complexity to the top and simplicity to the bottom. Remember this guideline and your compositions will sound way more structured and transparent. I hope to see you in the next video.